Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnanapradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitarthaya TattvaBodha-13 Our last discussion was about the Panchakosha, the five koshas, Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. This Annamaya, Kosha the sheath, Koshavat Achadakatvat, is called Kosha the sheath, not that it is sheath in a primary sense, but just as a sheath conceals something, so also this conceals the nature of the self, and therefore, in a secondary sense, these are called kosha, the sheath. So, Annamaya, this body, which is a product of the modification of food, is a sheath. It conceals the self. So, gross body is called Annamaya, born of food, sustained by food, it goes back into food, and therefore it is modification of food. So earlier what was called Sthula Shariram, the gross body, the same entity here is called Annamaya, modification of food, is the same thing. As we said, our personality can be either looked upon as made up of three bodies, gross, subtle and cause, or it can be looked upon is made of five sheaths. Same thing. The idea is to help us separate the self from the non-self, discriminate between the self and the non-self, because both of these are as though lumped together like the iron and the fire. So these two entities look like one. And so also here, this union or the combination of the self and non-self look like one entity. That is what we call the aviveka or non-discrimination, a delusion or a brahma of one where there are two. So in our ego, two elements are mixed up, self and non-self. Therefore we should recognize the non-self as a non-self to recognize the self as a self. So one way of describing the non-self, which we said the personality, is the three bodies, gross, subtle and causal. Another way of describing the same thing is 5 sheaths, Annamaya, Pranamaya, etc. The sheath made of food, the sheath made of vital air, the sheath made of the mind, the sheath made of the intellect, the sheath made of bliss. These 5 sheaths are there. As we said, they are not sheath in the primary sense. Not like a scabbard actually concealing a sword, not in that sense. But just as a scabbard conceals a sword, so also these 5 aspects of our personality as though conceal the true nature of the self. And how do they manage to conceal? Is by the notion that is born of the identification with these aspects of personality. Meaning that there is this gross body, which is a product of food, is called Annamaya, the modification of food. Anna means food. And how does this body become a sheath to conceal the self? By creating a notion, I am the body. So body just happens to be there. And I identify with the body and entertain this notion, I am the body. And many other notions arising from this notion, I am the body. Thus looking upon myself as a man or woman, as tall or short, as fair as dark, young or old, handsome or not, whatever. So all these various complexes I entertain about myself are all born of the identification with the body. And as we said yesterday, it is these notions which indeed conceal the true nature of the self. There is nothing that conceals the self. But the 10th man, for example, is concealed from the very 10th man on account of just a notion or conclusion that the 10th man is lost and notion that I am the 9th man. Therefore, in order to discover the 10th man, what is necessary is for the notion to go. So 10th man should recognize that this notion, that my conclusion that I am 9th man is a wrong conclusion. So when someone shows the fallacy of this conclusion, then that conclusion can be dropped. And so also I have this conclusion that I am this body. And from that all these other various conclusions arise. I said that I am a human being, I am a man, I am a woman, whatever. So it is necessary for us to know that these conclusions are wrong. But we will know them to be wrong if you understand how those conclusions arose in the first place. There must be some reason why we have these wrong notions. And that is what the text explains, how these notions come, how did they come about? Because of identification. And as we said, the whole personality is divided into 5 in order to cover all possible notions that we have. All the notions or the complexes that we entertain about ourselves can be divided into these 5 categories arising from the 5 different aspects of our personality. A physical personality, an active personality, an emotional, an intellectual, and a happy personality. So these are the 5 levels of personality, and identification at each level creates corresponding complexes. Each of that complex conceals the true nature of the self. This is how it is. And therefore, the Panchakosha, the 5 sheaths are discussed here. Annamaya, as I said, the body as though becomes a sheath by creating in me the notion because of identification of the body. It is not the fault of the body that it is there. It is nobody's fault, it is not my fault also. All the fault ultimately lies in ignorance, which is nobody's fault, because nobody has created it. Everybody is born with ignorance. And ignorance automatically creates a tendency of taking what I am not to be myself. And thus it is because of ignorance that I take the body to be myself. So that's one set of notions. Pranamaya kosha, the vital air sheath, which is modification of vital air. And nobody says I am prana, etc. But in a way we do say the modifications of prana are we identify with. So we said hunger and thirst and various pains, etc. are all modification of prana. And on account of identification with them, I entertain this other side of notions. I am hungry, I am thirsty. And this notion conceals the true nature of myself. Remember what we discussed yesterday, that for this superimposition or identification to take place, there is a general knowledge but absence of particular knowledge. Thus, that I am and that I am conscious, that knowledge is contained in every notion. Even when I say that I am unhappy or happy, that I am is always contained in that. I am a man or woman, I am always contained in that. That I am belongs to the self. That is the true nature of myself. Upon that, this qualification is added, and that is why that I am becomes limited. I am, as we will see, by itself is limitless. But when I add this appendage on that, and I say I am a woman or I am a man, immediately I am becomes limited. And therefore we have to separate I am from this. Where this is the idea of man or woman come? It comes from the body. If I recognize the body I am not, then that I am is separated from other things. So this is to enable us to do that is the purpose of this analysis. Pranamaya kosha, manomaya kosha. My emotions, I identify with the emotions, identify with the reactions, identify with my will. So nature of the mind is to will. And that is where all these likes and dislikes also are there. All the habitual errors are there. It's habitual faculty, reacting faculty. That is what we call the mind. And identification with that creates this I am happy, I am unhappy, I am angry, I am greedy, and various other concepts. So these are the notions, so the complexes arise on account of identification with what we call manas or the mind. Then vijnanam has the intellect. Intellect is the faculty where we make all decisions and judgments. And therefore my judgment is I am so and so. So identification of the intellect creates what we call the ego. And again, all these notions that we are talking about, they are all contained in the intellect. Even though body is said to be kosha, but the notion I am the body is in the intellect. Intellectual sheath. Thus branding myself as a success, as a failure, as a doctor, as a lawyer, as whatever, as well known, great, little, significant, whatever, they're all judgments of the intellect. And this is another set of notions arising on account of the identification with intellect. The doership also is in intellect, that I am an agent of action. That is also vijnanam yajnam tanute karmani tanute vicha. It is intellect that performs all kinds of actions, and therefore the kartrutvam, the sense of doership also is in the intellect. And fifth and the subtlest is anandamaya. On the page 24 it said, evameva karana sharira bhuta avidyastha malin sattvam priyada vritti sahitam sat anandamaya kosha. Interesting definition. What is anandamaya kosha? What is this bliss sheath? What is the sheath of happiness? Sheath made up of happiness. So Vedanta explains that happiness can be classified into three levels. Or happiness actually builds up in three levels, which in Sanskrit are called Priya, Moda and Pramoda. Priya is a level of happiness that arises by the very thought of something that is dear to me. Moda is the level of happiness that arises by possession of something very dear to me. And Pramoda is the level of happiness that arises by experiencing that. So, how the happiness builds up? When I acquire and experience something extremely dear to me, then there is a moment of ecstasy where I completely lose myself. That is the pramoda vritti, ecstasy, when I lose myself. But before that happened, it went through certain stages. The first stage was just thinking about what I love. That itself made me happy. Then possessing what I love made me very, very happy. And then enjoying or experiencing what I love made me extremely happy. It is that extreme happiness called ecstasy, is called bliss, or call it. That is the final sheath. This is called the Anandamaya Kosha. Ignorance is contained in there also because there is no, that I am also, because I am lost in that ecstasy. There is no knowledge that the ecstasy or happiness, Ananda, I am. So a very fine layer of ignorance is there, avidyastha. So karana sharira bhuta avidya, ignorance which is of the nature of the causal body. The malina sattvam, the sattva that is contaminated by tamas is called malina sattvam, the impure sattva. Sattva, rajas and tamas. When pure sattva is there is knowledge. But here, in ignorance, because of ignorance is that tamas or the darkness. So ignorance is there because I do not know, and sattva is there because I experience happiness. Therefore, in experience of happiness, both these are involved. Sattva also is involved. Sattva means that tranquility of the mind, sattva guna. And because there is happiness, but there is tamas or darkness because there is ignorance. Therefore, malina sattvam, this is an expression. So there is vishuddha sattvam and malina sattvam. Vishuddha sattvam, the pure sattva, essentially unmixed by impurity. That is called maya. So we'll see the creative power of the Lord is vishuddha sattva, essentially pure sattva, unmixed by any ignorance. So Lord is not ignorant. Whereas this Jivatma, the individual self, he is avidya. Ignorance is called malina sattva. The sattva is there, but it is contaminated, made impure by the ignorance. Thus, this malina sattvam, the impure sattva. Sattva because happiness is there, impurity because ignorance is there. And what is the ignorance? Avidya is the ignorance. That's what brings the impurity. What is avidya? Karana sharira bhuta, of the nature of the causal body. Priyadi vritti sahitam. The sattva also has categories priya, moda and pramoda. So sattva also builds up. By thinking, some happiness is there, sattva. By possession, happiness increases, greater sattva. By enjoyment, happiness is even more sattva. But still it is contaminated by impurity of ignorance because the ignorance of not knowing my true nature is still there even when I am enjoying the highest happiness. Therefore it is called malin sattvam, priyadi vritti sahitam, accompanied with the thought formations called priya, moda and pramoda. This is called the Anandamaya Kosha. Why all this is stated is because of Taittiriya Upanishad. Because in Taittiriya Upanishad, these 5 koshas or 5 sheaths are described. And what Taittiriya Upanishad says is that how our knowledge of ourselves should slowly progress. The first level of knowledge is Sava Esha Purushonnarasamaya. The first level of knowledge is that I am Annarasamaya. I am this body. That's the first level of knowledge. Even that is also knowledge. I am the body. So let us own up that knowledge. I am the body. What it means is that I am not anything outside the body. It should become clear that my son I am not, my daughter I am not, my wealth I am not, my house I am not, my spouse I am not, that I am body. That's the first realization of myself. So when I am settled with that understanding or realization, then the Upanishad says, Tasmadva etasmat annarasamayat anyontar atma pranamaya. Hey, as compared to that self made up of the annarasamaya or the modification of food, there is a self which is interior to that, subtler than that, and which in fact imparts sentiency to the self. That is pranamaya. There is a self made of vital air. So you are not the body, you are prana. Because body is alive on account of prana or the vital air. And therefore, you are not the body, but the self of the body. What's the self of the body? The prana or the vital air. So at each level, this self is compared to a bird. At every level, the self is compared to a bird. Bird has a right wing and the left and the tail and body. And so, tasya idameva shirah ayam dakshinah paksha ayam uttarah paksha ayam atma idam puchham pratishtha. So bird has a head, right wing, left, and the tail and the body. So the pranamaya also is like a bird. Tasya praneva shirah apanah uttarah paksha vyano dakshinah paksha. So it identifies what is the right wing and left wing of this bird. So then my second realization is, I am pranamaya. And it is not totally wrong, understand? That, yes, it is. I am pranamaya, I am made up of vital air. I am not confined to that, but definitely that is, that is included now. So second level of realization. And this should happen. One should realize that the gross body I am not, but I am the pranamaya, the vital air, which in fact enlivens the gross body, right? When that realization comes, then Upanishad says, Tasmadva etasmad pranamayat anyoantaratma manomaya. Hey, compared to the pranamaya, the self made of vital air, there is another self within that, subtler than that, controlling that, and that is the self made up of the manas, self made up of the mind. Because the prana also functions at the direction of the mind. It's the mind that directs the prana, the vital air, to perform various functions. Come on, prana, tell the hand, tell the arm to lift. Okay. Come on, prana, tell the legs to walk. So it's the mind that directs. The mind is the controller. It is subtler, and therefore it is the self of the prana. So Upanishad says, may you realize that you are made up of manas. So my third level of realization. When I am settled with that, then Upanishad says, Tasmad va etasman manomayat anyoantaratma vijnanamaya. Subtler than that, within that, controlling that, is yet another self. So you are not the manas, you are the intellect, which in fact controls there are various emotions in the mind. All these emotions also are controlled by the intellect, by the understanding. What has become a habit now was an understanding at some point in time, and therefore the understanding, the decision that takes the judgment, the ascertainment that takes place in intellect is even subtler than these emotions in the mind. Therefore, I am the intellectual, but the intellect I am. When that realization has come, so understand that how our realization or understanding ourselves is becoming subtler and subtler and subtler. So stage by stage I learned this. Stage by stage I create a distance. First I create a distance with the rest of the world outside the body, which is relatively easy, but that distance also has to be created, because sometimes a stupid human being becomes so attached to everything outside that he looks upon that as his self. So that is not the self. Your self is this body. Okay. And then prana, then mind, then intellect. Says, well, there is something subtler than intellect also. Intellect, what does it do? Intellect gains various kinds of knowledge. Intellect performs different kinds of actions. But who makes the intellect to go for knowledge? Who makes the intellect to perform different actions? It is an enjoyer which is inside, who wants to enjoy happiness, and it tells the intellect, come on intellect, I want happiness, perform this action. Because happiness can be gained when you acquire an object of enjoyment. So the intellect tells the bhokta, the enjoyer says to intellect, come on, perform this action. But to perform an action, there must be appropriate knowledge also. So intellect should first acquire the knowledge of how to perform the action, then perform the action to satisfy the demand of the one who wants happiness. So intellect also is not the ultimate reality. It is not the independent principle. That bhokta, the enjoyer, is the subtlest and the innermost principle. So who am I? Bhokta I am. Enjoyer I am. Enjoyer of happiness I am. And this is not an ordinary happiness we are talking about. Enjoyer of happiness where the I is almost lost completely. It is ecstasy in which the self is lost, which comes on many occasions. It comes when there is a moment of that tremendous happiness. It comes also when you are absorbed in music, absorbed in art, absorbed in devotion. And so, while chanting the name of the Lord also, people get absorbed. They have bhava samadhi. So all of these states can be equated to Anandamaya Kosha. Understand what Anandamaya Kosha is. Not simple stupid happiness we are talking about. We are talking about ecstasy, meaning that it is the highest level of happiness. Because we are coming closer and closer to the self. Now self is of the nature of Ananda. And the closest to that is this Anandamaya Kosha. And therefore, it reflects Ananda of the self in the highest degree, except a very thin veil of ignorance remains. Dhumena vriyate vannihi yathadarsho malena cha. Lord Krishna says that the obstacle or the distance between the self and the kind of ignorance is tamas, rajas and sattva. So the kind of veil that obtains in Anandamaya Kosha is comparable to the smoke covering the fire. And it's very easy to just fan that smoke in the fire is very evident. So when the smoke covers the fire, you may not see the flame, but you experience the heat all right. Similarly, when Anandamaya Kosha covers the self, you may not see the nature of self as I am Ananda, but you experience it all right. So there is experience of Ananda, experience of the self. All that is lacking there is recognition that this self I am. And thus the Ananda or the bliss that the yogis enjoy in their samadhi also is Anandamaya Kosha. The bhakta that enjoys in his absorption of samadhi is also Anandamaya Kosha. Anyway, people have such an attachment to this that they don't want to give it up. Therefore, a famous statement that I do not want to become sugar, I want to enjoy the sugar. So the bhaktas want to be born again and again so that they can enjoy this ananda or bliss that comes by devotion or service to the Lord. So Vedantin says now, be objective to this also. As you said yesterday, Gaudapadacharya says, Nasvade darsam tatra nissangha prajnaya bhaved. Hey, do not get stuck in the enjoyment of this rasa or the ananda. Gather yourself, become alert and vigilant. Nissangaha prajnaya bhaved. By prajna, by this knowledge, may you become nissangaha, may you become even detached to that ananda. And recognize that you are not the enjoyer of ananda, you are ananda. So, Brahmapucham Pratishtha. So, there is nothing. So, this Ananda itself is Tasya Priyameva Shiraha, Modo Dakshinah Pakshaha, Pramodo Uttarah Pakshaha, Ananda Atma, Brahmapucham Pratishtha. So, Taittiriya Upanishad says that this Ananda or happiness that one experiences has these three stages, Tasya Priyameva Shiraha. This Priya Vritti, that is the happiness arising on account of the thinking, thought of a priya object, dear object, is like the head of that bird of Anandamaya Kosha. So, Modo Dakshinah Pakshaha, the second level of the happiness arising by possessing is like the right wing of the bird. Pramoda Uttarah Pakshaha, the Pramoda Vritti, the highest happiness arising is like the left wing. Ananda Atma. Ananda is the very Atma, the body of that bird. Brahma Pucham Pradishta. Brahman is stabilizing tail. So Brahman is really the self of that Anandamaya Atma. And so now we are not told that Tasmadva Itasmat Anandamayat. That is why long debate is there in Brahma Sutra that what does Upanishad mean here? Does it mean that Anandamaya is the Atma? So the whole Adhikarana devoted is Anandamaya Adhikarana, where the contention is that Taittiriya Upanishad teaches that Anandamaya is Atma. There is a long Purva Paksha. Many people think that this is Siddhanta, but that is Purva Paksha, and then the answer is given. No, Brahma Pucham Pratishta. Because his Ananda is subject is also changing. Now Priya Vritti, Moda Vritti, Pramoda Vritti is therefore it is Vikari, it is changeable, and self cannot be changeable. Brahma Pucham Pratishta, Brahman which is changeless, that is the self. So thus, Anandamaya Kosha is the closest. And there is a recognition that Brahma I am, not the enjoyer of Ananda, but Ananda or Brahman or wholeness or happiness I am. Etat Kosha Panchakam, this is the 5 koshas. And now we are told the Viveka on the page 24, last line. Madiyam Shariram Madiyah Pranaha Madiyam Manascha Madiya Buddhihi Madiyam Ajnanam Iti Svenaiva Jnayate Tadyatha Madiyatvena Jnatam Kataka Kundala Grahadikam Swasmad Bhinnam Tatha Panchakoshadikam Madiyatvena Jnatam Atmana Bhavati. So these 5 koshas, are they Atma? Says no. 5 koshas Atmana Bhavati. It cannot be the self. How come it cannot be the self? So example is given. Tadyatha madiyatvena jnatam katak kundala gruhadikam. Just as kataka, kundala, gruhadikam. Kataka means a bangle, kundala means earring, gruha means a house, etc. So all these precious things, so ornaments, precious stones, house and other precious possessions that we have, they are very precious and have a very special relationship with them also. With the ornaments, with my possessions, they are very precious. At the same time, I have a very special relationship also, and therefore it is my house and I keep it in various order and all the trimming and everything is done, backyard, front yard, this is my house, my ornament, this is bangle, earring, it's all wonderful. But madiyatvena jnatam, the relationship that I have with all of this is, they are mine. Madiyatvena jnatam. Now there is a knowledge involved there. Whenever I think of this book, then with the book associated knowledge that this is my book, the mindness also is involved. So whenever I think of the house, then along with the idea of the house, the idea that it is mine is contained, understand? Whether it is my very dear car, very dear house, very dear ornaments, very dear clothes, whatever it is, the dear spouse, my dear children and anything. All of them are very dear to me, very close to me, and still there is this idea contained that this is mine. And when I know something is mine, there is also a knowledge involved there that it is not I. However dear my child is, and still there I know that it is not I. I call it my child. So my prince, whatever I call it, but it's mine. And in that, what is mine is definitely not I. So madiyatvena jnadam swasmad bhinnam. Whatever is known as mine is known also as something different from I, or that I is different from whatever I declare as mine. So now, taking this example and comparing it with our relationship that we have with these 5 sheaths. Madiyam shariram is annamaya kosha. This sheath made up the modification of food, which is what we call this body. What is my relationship with the body? I have a very special relationship with this body. It is very dear body, very precious body, no doubt. But still, it is my body because I call this body as mine, very often. If not all the time, sometimes I forget that. But very often, I call this body as my body. When I look at the mirror, when I'm doing exercise or whatever, when I go to a doctor, all of that time it becomes very clear, this is my body. What is wrong? What's the problem with my heart? What about my lungs? What about this kidney? What about my headache? So that time it is mine. In some way, I seem to stand separate from the body. So there are many occasions when the body is clearly known as mine, meaning that at that time in my mind, there is a distance between the body and myself. So madiyatvena jnatam shariram atmana bhavati. So body that is known as mine cannot be the self, because the possessor is always different from the possessed. Madiyaha pranaha. Even the prana also, vital air also, is known as my breath, my lungs, my breathing. When I am controlling the prana, for example, so controlling the incoming breath, controlling outgoing breath, I hold it, then I know it is my breathing, it's my prana. Prana is outgoing breath, apana, incoming breath, and I am controlling them. So then also they are known as mine. So we have to use these occasions. When I call this body as mine, use this occasion to emphasize this in the mind that look, this is mine. See, I know the body to be mine. Recognize my mind that you know that it is yours and therefore you are not the body. Madiyam manaha, my mind, that also we said. Swami, my emotions, this anger comes in my mind, happiness comes in my mind, attachment, aversion. Swamiji, my mind is restless. No, Swamiji, I am restless, this person says. You are not restless, you are all silence. No, Swamiji, I am restless. You are all silence. But Swamiji, I told you I am restless. You are all silence. If you repeat once more, there will be 2 restless persons, So this fellow got irritated because he complained that I am restless, and the Swami did not sympathize at all. Says, you are all silence. But I know I am restless. How can you say I am silence? I know I am restless. How do you know you are restless? I know my mind is restless. Okay, then your mind is restless. Who are you? You are the knower of the restless mind. The one who is aware of restless mind must be different from restless mind. Who are you? You are all silence. All restlessness is in the mind. The aware of the mind, is silence. So mind also is known as mind. And we know that today my mind is not in its right place, stay away from me, don't come near me. So, madiyam manaha, madiya buddhi, also I say, my intellect, my notions. There are many, very often I know that. My thoughts, this is my thought, this is my conclusion, this is my understanding, I don't know. So sometimes when we are discussing with each other and I present my understanding, you present yours, and then sometimes I have no way out, but this is what I think, this is what my thought is, this is what my belief is, okay. So then I seem to stand apart from my thoughts and my beliefs and my conclusions, which are all in the intellect. And so, Madhya Buddhi, it is my intellect. That means I am not the intellect. Madhyam Ajnanam, my ignorance. Often I do say I am ignorant. When I say I am ignorant, then there is identification with ignorance. But there are times when I say my ignorance also. I am aware that I am ignorant of something, and therefore, so very often I identify with these aspects. With body I usually am identified, but there are times when I call it mine. With the mind also I am usually identified, but there are times when I see the distance. With the intellect, with its thoughts and conclusions, I am generally identified. But then there are times when I see the distance. Svenaiva jnaya, it is Svenaiva jnayate. Swa means mine. Just as all of these are known as belonging to me. Tasasmad bhinnam ta panchakoda koshadikam madhiyatvena jnatam atman bhavati. And so these 5 koshas, 5 sheaths, means 5 levels of personality. You must know that this word sheath is a misleading word. To call the body as a sheath is not right. It is the notion that I am the body, that is a sheath. And therefore body doesn't have to go away, only the notion has to go away. How has the notion arisen? Notion has arisen by not recognizing a distance between myself and the body. How will notion go? By recognizing the distance. In fact, a distance obtains between the body and myself. That is a distance. But on account of ignorance, account of aviveka or non-discrimination, that distance has been erased, where there are two have been because of ignorance, so the distance is not recognized. All I need to do is to recognize the distance. And this is one method of recognizing a distance, that they are mine. Other method is what? That they are drushya, I am drashta. They are the objects of my awareness, I am the awarer. The seer is always different from what is seen. I am aware of my body. Awarer is different from the object of awareness. Just as I am aware of this flower, I, the aware of the flower, the subject, is different from the flower. So just as I am aware of the flower, so also I am aware of my body. In fact, more intimately aware. I know every little ache and pain in my body, every joint I know. I am very keenly aware. I am the aware of the body, so subject is different from the object. I am aware of the prana also. All kinds of gas refluxes and things that happen, all prana, I know, I am aware of that. Different from that. Aware of my emotions. I know what I am. Sometimes I am kind, sometimes I am cruel also. I am aware of that. Aware of my thoughts, of my intellect also, my conclusions, my understanding. Aware of the ignorance. I am aware of these things. The awarer is different from what he is aware of. So what is necessary is to recognize the distance that is already existing. What ignorance has done is that distance has been as though erased. And therefore, where there are two, there is this notion of one. Just because there is notion of one doesn't mean it has become one. The notion does not change anything, but anyway, it deprives us of what the reality is. And therefore, the notion has to go. So this Panchakosha, these 3 bodies are called Upadhi of the Atma. Upadhi is that which throws its weight upon something else, like the flower is Upadhi, which throws its attributes upon the crystal. So therefore the crystal appears to be red on account of this flower, or pink, or orange, as the case may be. And so also the Atma appears to be mortal because of identification of the body. Atma appears to be hungry because of identification with prana. Atma appears to be sad because of identification with the mind. Atma appears to be successful because of identification with the intellect. Atma is jubilant or ecstatic because of identification with ananda. To create the distance. And to be able to create the distance, this is so, Atmakaha Panchakoshatitaha. It is that which is beyond, which transcends all the five sheaths. Like an actor transcends the various costumes that he puts on. So thus, in the analysis so far, we are told what the self is not. If you go back to that passage, it says, Atma kaha, what's the nature of self? Sthula, Sukshma, Karana, Sharirad Vyatiriktaha, the one who is distinct from the gross, subtle and causal bodies. Panchakoshatitaha, one who transcends or is beyond the five sheaths. Avasthatraya Sakshi, the one who is a witness of the three states of awareness. Thereby telling us what Atma is not, what I am not. Three bodies I am not. Five sheaths I am not. These three states I am not. So this is the prakriya called neti neti, negating what I am not. And this is very important because I right now take myself to be different from what I am. Therefore, by saying what I am not, all the notions that I entertain about myself, all of them are negated. Notions arising from identifying with what I am not. Now when all notions are gone, then I need to be, who am I then? If three bodies I am not, if five sheaths I am not, the three states I am not, then who am I? So that's the next question on the page 25. Atma tarhi kaha. Then who am I? That's the question. What's the nature of the self? Who am I? The answer is given. Satchidananda Swarupaha. Who am I? What's the nature of self? Satchidananda Swarupaha. Of that of Sat, Chit, Ananda. That's what you are. What is the next question is, what is Satchidananda? So these are words so far. Who are you? Who am I? You are Satchidananda. What does it mean? So the next question. Satkim kalatrepi tishthate iti sat. So you say that I am Satchidananda. Okay, what is Sat? Satkim, what is Sat? Kalatrepi tishthate iti sat. That which stays, which obtains, which abides, which persists in all the three periods of time is called Sat. Sat means existence. It is a word that is derived from the root as. As means to be. And Sat is actually what we call the present participle. From the third person plural santi, if you then remove the ti, then what remains is Sat. So, Sat means that which is, or Sat means existence. So what is Sat? Sat means existence. What is existence? That which ever is in all the three periods, meaning past, present and future. That which ever is. That which always was and that which always will be. This is most comforting to know. Who am I? You are Sat. Your existence. What is existence? That which obtains in all the three periods of time. What does it mean? That there never was a time when you were not, you always were. If Sat means that which obtains in all the three periods of time, meaning that it obtains in the past, in the present and the future. That means the past, there never was a time when Sat or existence or Atma or I was not. If Atma has birth, let us say, what is birth? Birth is coming into existence of something that did not exist so far and it came into existence. That's called birth. So if there is birth, then there must be a time before the birth when it was not. If Atma is death, then what is death? Death is something that exists becomes non-existent. That's what we call death. If Atma is death, then a time will come when Atma will cease to exist. But here we are told, Atma is Sat, that which exists in all the three periods of time, in the past, present and future. Meaning, Atma always existed in past. There never was a time when Atma or Sat or I was not. It will always exist in future, meaning that there will never be a time when I will not be. I always will be. And of course, I am in present. As Lord Krishna says, Natvivaham jatunasam natvam neme janadhipaha nachayvana bhavishyamaha sarve vaimatah param. In the very first verse, Lord Krishna says, in the first verse, the 11th verse is the preface, Ashochanam Ashocastvam. But the first verse of teaching is the 12th verse in the second chapter, Nat Vivaham Jatunasam. Hey Arjuna, there never was a time when I was not, Lord Krishna says. Natvam, there never was a time when you were not. Neme Janadhipaha, there never was a time when all these kings also were not. Nachayvana bhavishyamaha sarve vaimatah param. And there never will be a time when all of us will not be. Meaning that all of us were and all of us will always be. All of us were, which means that there was no birth. All of us will be, meaning that there is no death. The self is free from birth and death. Najayate mriyate va kadachit. It is neither born nor does it die. If it is neither born and it does not die, then it must necessarily be changeless, because that which is subject to change will perish someday. That either grows or decays, so that which grows will decay someday also. And therefore, whatever is changeable is perishable. For Atma to be immortal, meaning to be always there in future, for it to be imperishable, it should necessarily be free from all the changes also. It must be nirvikara or shadvikara rahita. The body is characterized by these vikara or modifications. Avasti it is, jayate is born, vardate it grows, viparinate it matures, apakshiyate it declines, vinasyate it dies. All of these modifications are in body. Self is, or I, is free from all modifications. Sat. Very beautiful word. Who am I? Sat, I am. I am existence. I always am. The am is Sat. I am. That's my nature. That's all. If you can become as simple as this and eliminate all other additions to that. I am. Who are you? I am. Not man, woman, good, bad, here, there, happy, unhappy. No, I am. That is the persistent truth about me. Everything else about me keeps on changing. Understand? Now I'm happy, then unhappy. Now I'm a speaker, then a listener. Now I am right, then I may be wrong. All of that keeps on changing, but I am never changes. So what is the abiding truth about me? What is about me that does not change? Understand that whatever that change is always temporary, is always incidental, is always subject to coming and going. It is in fact not of any consequence. What does not change is inherent. So what is the inherent nature of me? This body is fine, but that is incidental. It's only there as long as I am awake. It's not even there when I am dreaming. My mind is all fine, but even that is not there when I am sleeping. What is that always is? Before the birth the body was not, after death the body will not be. What is it that always was? what that always will be. And 3 periods of time should include 3 states also. The waking, dream and deep sleep. Creation, sustenance, dissolution. That which persists in all these 3. And that will require us to give up all the complications. Coming to the simplest thing, I am. That's the only thing that is ever persistent. That is the abiding aspect of me. Everything else about me keeps on changing. Upon the I am, upon the Sat, upon existence, all the changes take place. We said that the changes must necessarily require a changeless substratum. The motion must necessarily require a motionless substratum. So all the changes that take place, what is substratum? Sat, or existence, which is changeless. So when it is said that it is in 3 periods of time, that means that it is not within the realm of time, it is not within the framework of time, it is not limited by time. Time is that which always brings about changes and modifications, and therefore it is free from changes and modifications because time cannot reach it. Time has no access to that. So it is changeless. Sat means changeless. Therefore it is also called Satyam. Satya also means changeless. So what is called Satchidananda here, in Taittiriya Upanishad it says Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam Brahma. Brahman is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, which is translated as Satchit Ananda. This Satchit Ananda expression you don't find in an Upanishad. But we find Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. So Upanishad is the major Upanishad that we are talking about. There are so many, you will find it, but in the major Upanishad that we study, the closest we find is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. Satyam is that which is truth, which is changeless, and which is substratum of all the changes. Who am I? I am Sat. Free from birth, free from death. You see, effect is that which is born, and effect is that which dies. For example, this pot is born and pot dies. There was a time when this object was not. It's made of clay. There was a time when it was not because it was birth. So what was it before which birth? It was clay. There will be a time when it will not be, when it will perish. Again it will be clay. So whatever is created is perishable. Whatever is imperishable, for something to be imperishable, it should not be created. Whatever is created in time. And therefore, it is subject to modifications in time. And therefore, someday, time will wear it out. It is the nature of time to wear out everything. Kalo jagat bhakshaka. This kala of the time, it devours the whole creation. And for something not to die, for something to be imperishable, it must necessarily be free from the influence of time. So, Trikalevi tishtati. Sat is that which is beyond the time. That means it is imperishable, it is immortal, changeless, free from modifications. That is what is Sat. That's what I am. That's the nature of the self. Satchidananda. Then, so as I said, the Atma or the Sat should not be created. It should not be effect. If it is effect, like the pot is an effect from the clay. Effect is that which is created, which is perishable. And therefore, Atma cannot be created from anything. If it is born of something, if created of something, it will die also. If Atma or consciousness is a product of matter combinations, then consciousness is born, it will perish also. Then it cannot be Sat, it cannot be obtaining in all the 3 periods of time. It could not be created. It always is. Then how come you don't see it? You may not see it. Sat you may not see. Sat requires some medium of manifestation, then you can see. Therefore that Sat assumes different names and forms and becomes objectifiable to us. Or we can experience that. But Sat is by own self and it cannot be a product of anything. The effect will die. The cause also will die someday. Like a seed is the cause which gives rise to a sprout and itself perishes also. Like the plantain tree, it gives rise to plantain, itself perishes. If Atma were the cause, then by giving rise to effect, someday Atma also will perish. For Atma to be imperishable, for it being Sat, it cannot be cause also. So, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, it is Anantaram. So, Aparam, Apurvam, Anantaram. It does not have Purva. It doesn't have anything before it. It doesn't have a cause before it. Anaparam, there is nothing after that. There is no effect also. Atma, the self, is free from idea of cause and effect. It is not caused by anything. It does not cause anything. It's neither cause nor effect. Neither born, does not die. It is imperishable, immortal, changeless, substratum for all changes and for all cause and effect. But so, Nachiketa's question, Anyatra dharmat, anyatra asmat, krita kritata, anyacha bhutacha, bhavyacha, yattat pashyasi, tadvada. Nachiketa says to Yamaraja, please teach me that which you know, which is different from dharma and adharma, cause and effect, past and future. So Sat means that which is beyond past and future, beyond cause and effect, because all of these are in the realm of change. That is Sat, that is existence, that is I. So who am I? I am Sat. Then this is enough actually. But just to help us further understand it clearly, we are to Sat Chit Ananda. Don't think again that Sat and Chit and Ananda are different from each other. That Sat Chit Ananda, the three qualifications Atma has, no. That's called Lakshana. What is Sat is Chit, and what is Chit is Ananda. Then why do you use three words? Just to help us understand, that's all. So next question is Chit. So the question is asked here. Chit kim jnana swarupaha. So what is Chit? Satchidananda, what is Chit? Jnana swarupaha. It is of the nature of knowledge or nature of consciousness. Chit means knowledge, or Chit means consciousness, or awareness, or intelligence, depending on whichever word we use, as long as we understand what that word means, because every word has a connotation. So the explanation Jnana Swara comes from Taittiriya Upanishad. Satyam, Jnanam, Anandam. What is Chit? Of the nature of knowledge, nature of consciousness, nature of awareness. Not consciousness of something, but consciousness. See, we are conscious of things. Conscious of a flower, conscious of a book, conscious of a pot, conscious of a clock, conscious of a crystal, conscious of a tree, conscious of a human being. So we are conscious of things, and as the things keep on changing, what I am conscious of also keeps on changing. In all these changing consciousness, is there something that does not change? So, knowledge of tree and knowledge of cloth and knowledge of pot and knowledge of table and knowledge of chair, the knowledge or consciousness seems to acquire these different forms. In that, is there something common? Yes. The unqualified consciousness is common. See, for example, there are all these various objects made of the clay. And in this, the clay has this form, you call it a pot. Clay has another form, call it whatever, it's a flower vase, and call it something else. So, clay is called by different names. So, names and forms are different. Is there something that is common to all the names and forms? Clay. So also the various cognitions that arise in our mind. You see, in our mind, various cognitions arise as I perceive different objects. So when I perceive the tree, there is tree cognition. a thought of the nature of tree. When I perceive a flower, there is flower cognition, a thought of the nature of flower, a thought of the nature of clock and book and whatever. So thus different cognitions take place. In all these different cognitions, is there something that is common? They are all qualified consciousness. So unqualified consciousness in association with a given name and form becomes as though qualified consciousness. And therefore, consciousness of part, when consciousness is qualified by partness. Consciousness of flower, when consciousness becomes qualified by flowerness. Consciousness of clock, when consciousness becomes qualified by clockness. But consciousness that becomes qualified is the same. Unqualified consciousness, in association with different names and forms, becomes as though qualified consciousness. So what is generally known as consciousness in the Western world are nothing but these different states of mind or different cognitions. That's what they call consciousness. So, but there is consciousness of something. In all that consciousness, the unqualified consciousness is that which is common. So jnanam means knowledge. Usually by the word knowledge you understand this knowledge of things. But in those knowledge of things, what is common is unqualified knowledge. So what I know, the object of knowledge keeps on changing. But then each object of knowledge is illumined by the consciousness which is unqualified consciousness. Such as, just as the light that illumines all the various colors and forms here, and light seems to assume various colors and forms that it illumines, but light itself is formless, attributeless, illumines various forms and attributes, itself is free from all forms and attributes, and so also the consciousness illumines various forms of knowledge, itself is free from every qualification, because it illumines all qualifications. So Chit means unqualified knowledge or unqualified consciousness. That is the Chit. Sat is unqualified existence and Chit is unqualified consciousness. Okay, we'll continue. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.